So about a week or two ago, I started working on trying to integrate Threads into the social media scheduler app. I didn't think that I would get any good progress because when I first started doing this about 2 years ago, I had came across issues with trying to programmably post things on Threads to begin with. At the time, they didn't even have an API, so there were things out there like unofficial repos that can kind of do the same thing that you're looking for, but it wasn't really supported, and you didn't know when those URLs are going to change, so I didn't really think that was the best method going forward. And I kind of just always put Threads in the background. It was one of the actual social media places that I use personally, but knowing the fact that there wasn't anything I could programmably do, I kind of just stopped. And thought of other social media providers. And periodically I would look into if anything had changed with what was going on with Threads. I would say about a year ago, I had found out that Threads has an API, or they had just built it, something along those lines. Like, it's very, very new. When I first tried to set up and configure out having the authorization to use OAuth flow and use the API that way, it was very difficult. I had to set up a test user, and it seemed like as if only the person who was the developer would be able to actually use the Threads API. So it didn't look like as if there was actually any progress with just having normal OAuth, where someone could be able to use Threads as a sign-in, use that token, and then be able to post on their behalf. It didn't look like it was there yet. So fast forward to last week, and I decide, you know what, let me try to pick this back up again. And so I decided to try to incorporate Threads into the app and see how that works now that it's been about 2 years or so. So when I looked on the Meta platform to try to look into setting up OAuth and getting an app service set up, it looked like as if it was a little bit easier. I still had to build out the required actions, use cases, those type of things, and make sure I got the right permissions and scope. But once those things were kind of built out, I was then able to actually then incorporate that into the app. Now, this actually changed up a bit of things because when I first was doing this, I actually was using Instagram login to be able to authorize doing stuff with Threads. Now it's going to be that Threads will have its own actual login in OAuth. So that means that I'm gonna have to separate this. So as you can see with these accounts here, before I just had like Meta or Facebook for Instagram and Threads. And so I basically had to separate out those things as far as the login flow and the account login flow to make sure that I could at least separate out someone's Instagram account versus their Threads account. And once I had OAuth pretty much working, I was then very confident about the next steps, because before I had to do something with the test case, like I said before, and that had its own key and stuff, so it was very specific user. Now that I can actually use OAuth, everything changes because the API calls are just the normal API calls. There's nothing else special outside of actually just trying to get the right access and authorization. So from that, I switch up the accounts and logins to have the new logos. And then I also go in and change how the database is going to manage handling out the accounts. Now that, Threads is its own thing, I don't want it in, let's say, the Meta accounts or anything, or the Instagram accounts. So I'm gonna make a whole new table that can basically handle out the sub ID, the access token, any refreshes that need to happen, those type of things. And so I set up the changes in the DB service to therefore handle out Threads accounts. And then I decided to myself that I'd also handle out YouTube accounts, Instagram accounts, like anything that basically wasn't filled out, I'm going to fill them out now. Because before this, I only had LinkedIn working and Twitter or X or whatever working on the actual phone app. On the desktop app, pretty much all of them are working, but on the phone app, we just had those two. So if we're getting closer, I figured I might as well try to fill out that information with the new tables. Now, I will say that posting to Threads is just as annoying as posting to Instagram, but once you actually learn how to mess with one of their APIs, literally all of them are the exact same. So it becomes a little bit easier because now I can be able to at least apply a lot of the stuff that I would use in Threads to Instagram and vice versa. And that's what I've actually done throughout the past 2 years. For the most part, when it came down to at least Instagram's API, because I've had more years of experience dealing with it. But then also, once I finally got my hands on the Threads API, noticing how they're similar. One of the most annoying aspects of dealing with the Threads API is that in order for you to actually publish anything, you have to create something in a container. It's basically saying that you're going to fill out a set of informational things that need to be sent over to Meta's platform and Meta servers, and then from there, they're going to give you a status back, and you can check on that status to know if it's successful. Once you know it's successful, then you can make another API call to then actually publish that content. So the reason why I say it's annoying is because if you're just dealing with text, then you're not dealing with images or video like I'm doing right now. They basically still require that you still set up a container. It's basically like, imagine you have a container that could be video, could be images, and you could have a description on it, or whatever. Essentially, you can make it so that it's just text and would just have the description, and you won't send any image or video or anything like that, and that will be the container that will just actually post a text message. But in my opinion, it would just be easier to make an API that allows you to just do everything in one shot, so you don't have to make a container to then publish if you're just doing text. So that's one of the things that I always thought was kind of annoying, but once you kind of get used to that and you do some testing and mess around with it, it's not too big of a deal, especially because it kind of makes things a little bit easier. If, for example, someone made a video or an image or multiple images or whatever, and they wanted to send that to Meta, well, that basically means that most of the code is going to be essentially the same, because then I can essentially just decide whether or not the mode of what they're trying to send, whether it's text, video, or images, and then basically fill in most of the actual function code with all the dynamic data that the user had provided from the database when they're creating out their post or scheduled content. And then this would allow it so that all you have to do is just check if it's just video or image or whatever. And from there, it should just send out. So it makes it a little bit easier for creating out that function. And again, what's also cool about this is that most of all of that code is the exact same for Instagram. So if I wanted to send images or video, essentially, if I wanted to, I can make everything all in one flat function and then just choose the provider if I wanted to. The only reason I don't is because if for any reason they decide to migrate away from it almost having the same endpoints and it almost having the same type of parameters, if for any reason, then I would have to refactor into splitting those two things up anyway. So I personally have them split up right now, but essentially they're tit for tat the same. And so the next thing that I'm gonna do is work on the Instagram side of it. Instagram, from what I know, doesn't just allow you to just post tweets or text messages or whatever like Threads does. So because of that, it's going to be about images and video, which is going to be extremely helpful. So from there, I'm assuming that it's going to be good and easy to do since I have most of that code done already, but we'll see. Other than that, I hope the rest of everyone's day goes well. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, please leave it in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace, everyone.